Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3H's of the channel. And in this video, I hope you're ready for this one. It's all about weird creatures. Some of them are cryptids that I've talked about before, but some of them are things I've never heard of. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So this didn't happen to me, it happened to my dad. It was the mid-50s, when he was a kid in rural Canada. My dad's neighbor is hauling hay on a wagon and gets my dad to sit on top to keep the hay from falling off. My dad falls off the wagon and a pitchfork on the ground punctures his skull. My dad is rushed home. The doctor arrives and says that it doesn't look good. My dad describes how for weeks that he would wake up in the middle of the night with blood pulsing out of his nose. The entire family believes that he's going to die soon. One night, he wakes up and sees two figures outside of his bedroom window with glowing yellow or amber eyes watching him. The next moment, they are in the room with him at the foot of his bed. My dad says they didn't move, but he felt as though they were going into his head. And then as quick as they came, they disappeared. The nosebleeds never came back after that night. Ever since then, my dad is convinced that aliens are real and that they saved his life, but he doesn't know why. It's worth noting that my dad is still very skeptical about anything paranormal, but is 100% convinced that aliens exist because of this incident. This is something that happened back when I was 15. I was a freshman in high school. There's a really big park with a huge wooden castle near my neighborhood. There's multiple paths and trails that go through the park and connect to nearby neighborhoods and whatnot. One of the paths is one that I would take through the park, past the castle, when walking to my friend's house. One weekend night, me and my friend, who were chilling at my house, decided to head over to this place and stay the night there. It was roughly 11 p.m. or so. The park is closed, and technically nobody is supposed to be there. It's extremely dark out. Me and him leave the house and start making our way towards his. We get to the park, and on the path to his place, as we started passing by the castle, I got this sudden sense of dread and fear. I tried to just shake it off. Me and my friend then stopped dead in our tracks for what sounded like a woman's voice coming from the castle. We were only spooked for a second though, and we just assumed that it was some people drinking or smoking or doing whatever. That quickly changed when the almost inaudible female voice screamed as loud as she or whatever it was could. The scream was accompanied by more screams and other voices, seemingly to come from this castle. But they weren't regular human screams. They sounded almost demonic, and some of them were unnaturally deep, and they were not even screams, they were bellows. Me and my friend ran as fast as we could. We both sprinted the entire way and didn't stop until we got out of the park and out of the woods and were on his street. We got inside his house, locked the door, and headed straight into the basement. Safe to say, we both did not sleep well that night. To this day, I almost wish that I went inside the castle to find out who or what was screaming, but I know it's probably for the best that I didn't. I've been back to that park a few times at night, and nothing really happened. There were no cars in the parking lot, or any sign of people being there. It wasn't just a few screams either. It was like 50 voices at least, much too many people for that tiny castle. So I've only had one thing that I can count as spooky happen to me. In 2015, me and my friends saw some spooky stuff. We were on the way back to one of our houses. We were out late that night because we were making graffiti underneath a bridge. We have to pass by the schoolyard. It's not spooky by itself. I've been there 1,000 times. As we arrive to the middle of the schoolyard, we see something sitting on the stairs with what looks like a yellow blanket over it. But the blanket seemed almost too small. At first, we were debating, is that two people kissing or making out? And we thought, yeah, that has to be what it is. But then, the more we looked at it, it didn't look like that. We didn't know what it was. As we got a better angle, this weird blanket thing starts to move, and then these legs kind of kick out from the bottom of it. And these legs are the longest I've ever seen. They have to be 2 meters each. Now, I was still a little high, so I go, oh, I guess I saw something. And my friend goes, yo, are you guys seeing those legs? And then my other friend says, holy shit, look at that thing. And as the thing saw us, it started to stretch out its legs and arms. My friend yells to run. I don't doubt it. I start to turn and run for my life. This thing had impossibly long legs and impossibly long arms. There's no way that a human could have any legs or arms that long. And as we're sprinting, we realize that this thing is not running at us. It's running away from us, like it didn't want to be seen. I don't know where it ran off to, but after about 5 minutes of us running, we stopped and talked. At first, I thought that I had hallucinated the whole thing, but the other two guys said that they had saw the exact same thing. I know nothing about this kind of stuff, but after a little bit of research, I found out about something called skinwalkers, but those are usually native. I don't know what the hell this thing was. It was in the middle of a city. But the way some people describe them as like long legs and long arms and impossibly weird angles, it just fitted so perfectly. Is this shit for real? So this is a story that happened way back when my brothers got back from the Air Force. I used to joke about it with them and call it the Chair Force, but that's a story for another day. They both joined the Air Force while I went into private security. I was showing off my Jeep to my bros, and I want to give them a scare too. No particular reason why, it's just a brother thing to do. So it's 2 a.m. I have them with me. I slowly pull into Constitution Drive, which is outside of Allentown. I have a plan to scare them pretty good. Halfway down the road, we reach a gate. I make them get out and open it for me. They get out and start walking toward the gate, and I turn off the Jeep along with all the lights, pretending that something went wrong. Now, of course, they both run back to the Jeep, flipping out. My plan has worked. Laughs are had all around. I give them the, you should have seen your faces, and you can imagine how happy they were about that. So, I turn the Jeep back on to continue our trip. I flip my lights on, and one brother points out a set of eyes that seem to be glowing or shimmering just out of the reach of my lights. And then I look around more, and I see 4 pairs of these eyes. Each is a different height. The more I look, the more I notice that it isn't a bright green reflection like a normal animal though. Now in my head, I start oh-shitting a little bit, but I'm also very curious. On Constitution Drive, it's 1 lane on a dirt or stone road with a 10-foot cliff or hill on one side and a cliff with a 30-foot drop into a river, and the road is very narrow in most spots, so it's damn near impossible for something to disappear unless it jumps off the cliff into the river. I roll up to where the eyes were. There's nothing. We start hearing branches snapping from the cliffside, not the riverside. I turn my spotlight on to see what looks like what I can only describe as a panther, but much, much longer and much lower to the ground. We slow down to 10 miles per hour, and it creeps from the edge of the cliff and then out of view over and over again. It seems to absorb the light. With 2 of my 100-watt spotlights hitting it, it should be lit up like a Christmas tree. The surrounding area is lit up, but we still cannot see it. We're all flipping shit, and we haul ass doing 50 miles per hour down this road, and this thing is all of a sudden keeping up with us. There's more eyes in the distance, and again, curiosity gets the better of us. We're hauling ass toward them to try and see what they are, but we can't seem to get close to them, no matter how fast we go. My brother in the back stands up and starts firing shots off at the thing on the cliff. My brother in front of me does the same. The eyes are now about 20 feet from us and not moving. I stop, and we all start kind of shooting at them, and after a couple rounds, there's nothing. We pull up to where the shots were hitting. Lights shine on something wet-looking on the ground. My brother in front gets out and gets it on his hand and comes back to the Jeep. It wasn't a blood-looking type of liquid. It was more like a wet putty or a slime. It kind of reacted like cornstarch and water. It was very dark purple as well. Eventually, we decided to get the hell out of there in the other direction, and we haven't really talked about that night besides a couple of times, but I don't know what those things that we saw were. I have a very weird and bizarre story. Nobody believes me, but it's 100% true, unless I'm completely misconstruing a whole bunch of coincidences. So it was several years ago in the fall. My girlfriend is of the pagan type. She tells me all about her beliefs. She claims that the Nico, a Japanese catfolk, is based upon a real demon. Many names by different cultures, but she called them Nightwalkers. Supposedly, they were demons who would literally rip the soul and body apart and then drag both to hell. And I thought, yeah, alright. I don't really believe in all that, but I loved her, so I would just listen to it because it made her happy to tell me. One night, though, I was driving home from her house. We lived 1.1 miles from each other. I slowed down for a stop sign. Something weird catches my eye. I look to the side, and I see a man, hunched over, shirtless, in what appears to be dark brown pants. I thought, weird, it's super cold out. Why is he half naked? And then he stands upright. From a distance of a full block, his height begins to rise up to half the tree trunk, a good 7 or 8 feet. I immediately say out loud, "What the F?" And then he vertically jumps into the air, vanishing as if he were stepping behind a door or something, like a filter that just removed him from reality. I call her up, freaking out, asking her what the hell this was supposed to be, and she's yelling, "Get the hell out of there, now." I stay on the phone with her the whole time. Suddenly, there's loud noises everywhere, tree limbs shaking, leaves falling, as if something is jumping through them like a Naruto character. I hear tires screech as a car comes to a halt, as if something ran in front of it. I get to my alley, park my car, and run out. I hear a motorcycle slow down, and then hightail it and squeal out like something spooked him. I hear the neighbor's dog barking aggressively. The owner steps out. "What the hell are you barking?" And then, "Get inside, now." All within seconds of each other. I end up jumping my fence, run across my yard, get inside, and lock my door. I'm still on the phone. And then, something lands on my roof. Something very, very heavy, followed by 2 striding thuds, and something drag across the shingles. I ask her what the hell this thing is, and she claims it's the Nightwalker. And then I say, well, what the hell is it doing here? She says it's hunting. I hear it leap off the roof, and I remember that we were just over a mile away. About 9 seconds pass on the phone, and then I hear it land on her roof. She freaks out and screams. Her phone goes dead. All night, I waited for a phone call back or tried to call her, but I was too scared to leave my room. The next morning, though, police are everywhere. All over the place, people's shingles are tore up. It looks like that something heavy hit the roof and then dragged along until the shingles tore up. I call her. She's okay. I go to her house. One of her trees has all the bark ripped off it, and the yard smells like it was set on fire. And she said that as soon as the thing touched her roof, all of her electronics went dead. Anything with a battery was just zapped. It has to be one of the spookiest things I've ever experienced in my life. My girlfriend and I live about 1.5 to 2 miles away from each other. We live in Vegas, and if you've ever been there, you'll notice that a lot of the residential neighborhoods away from the strip and casinos border the desert. Imagine whole neighborhoods that just end into the nothingness that are the Sierra Nevadas. If you live far away enough from the lights, like we do on the southwest side of town, you get a pretty clear look at the stars. Kind of awesome. Unlike the major cities like LA, you have virtually no stars in the night sky due to light pollution. Sorry this is taking forever, and I'm rambling, but I'm just kind of setting it up. It's important, and I'll start. So I was dropping my girlfriend off home one night. It was around 1 or 2 in the morning, and it was a very hot summer night. So I begin my 2 to 5 minute drive home. It's important to note that on this specific night, the desert was well lit up by the stars and the moon. So I was driving down the road, and I see a handful of taillights up ahead of me, maybe a 1/4 mile. As I get closer, I realize that the cars are parked on the deserty side of the road, which is weird considering how late or early in the night it was. I decide to pull over. I was a lifeguard at one of the casinos that was a hotel and pool at the time, and in case someone was hurt, I knew CPR and first aid. I pull up and park my car, and I see maybe 10 people standing around talking together. One guy had a golden lab. I recognized a few of them from our local gym. Our neighborhood is small, with its own shopping district, so it's hard not to run into somebody that you know in the area. Most of them are older, respectable people, very much middle-class people with families. I walk up and I ask what's going on, and one of the guys, whom I know most from the gym, tells me that they saw something strange out in the desert. That's when I realize that most of them are staring out into the desert, trying to get a good look, but no one has actually walked out there to see what it is. After what is about 15 minutes, some other guy who was elderly starts shouting, "What is that?" And everyone starts kind of freaking out. The golden lab starts freaking out as well, barking and trying to escape the collar and run off into the desert. I follow everyone's gaze, and what I see paralyzes me. A tall, humanoid figure, white or gray, taking off into the desert, out into nothingness. In fact, the direction he was running will lead you into the nothingness of the Sierra, and eventually California, but there's no civilization for hundreds of miles. You could almost hear and feel its footsteps as it strode away, long and heavy. The desert is covered in cacti and dead brush, and uneven dirt, mud, and sand make it very hard to just book it like that. Aside from the steps and the people shouting, you could also hear brush being trampled and ripped out of the ground. What terrified me the most is the fact that although whatever it was maybe a football field away, at that distance, it still appeared to be well over 7 feet tall. I couldn't imagine the size of this thing standing next to a human. I don't want to. After a few more minutes, people start hopping in their cars. The dog is still going crazy. My mouth is dry, and I feel like all emotion has left my body out of the sheer fear that I experienced. The last remaining couple of minutes of my drive home seemed eternal. I snapped out of it for a second when my phone rang. It was a text from my girlfriend asking if I made it home okay. A custom we have. Super cute, I know. I didn't tell her about what happened. I lied and said that I was already in bed. It was then that I realized that the center console of my car wasn't lit. The radio, clock, dials, etc. were all shut off. My headlights too. I tried turning on the radio, and I got nothing. Right before that, I was running my phone through the speakers via aux, and it worked just fine. The next morning, I popped the hood, and I find that all the fuses had been shorted. I never turned my car off when I parked. I was able to jumpstart my car by popping the clutch with a push, since I drive stick, but I've never seen that happen before. It's a relatively new car as well. I couldn't sleep. This was a few years ago. Sometimes, when I make that same drive home from my girlfriend's house, late at night, I am terrified of looking west into that same empty space. So those were definitely pretty weird, weren't they? If you had a specific one that really stood out to you, let me know which one it was down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? As always, I have an email in the description below, as well as a PayPal and a Patreon, and super thanks here on YouTube if you would like to donate to the channel. But if you can't or don't want to or whatever, that's fine too. Just watching the videos, commenting and sharing and liking, you guys know what to do. It really helps the channel. And while it may not have been a creature, that one about the castle thing in the park reminded me of something that happened a long time ago to me. The very short version is that I was at this park or school playground at night that has a ball diamond, and I could hear a whole bunch of people down there at the ball diamond. It was in the middle of the night too. I say middle of the night, but it was like 11 p.m. and it sounded like that they were playing a game of baseball or softball down there. I thought this was weird since it's pitch black out, but it wouldn't be the weirdest thing that I've seen people do around here, so I figured I'd go down and see what was going on, not to interfere, just to see. And when I got down there, all I found was just nothing. There was no people, there was no baseball game happening. It's like it was a memory that just kind of came to life in that moment. But yeah, I just thought of that when I heard the one about the screaming. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, then you know what to do. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching. Have a good week.